We move to the next topic, which is dispersants. I'm going to guide you on the meaning of dispersants, the usage and how it works, and the importance in paint production process. Let's start. What do we mean by dispersants in paint production? A dispersant, it is a chemical that breaks down particles into smaller units for even distribution results. What did we mean by that? Let me explain. In paint production, we have what we call solvents and we have what we call particles. Particles are those chemicals that are in powder form, according to layman. We have what we call extender and pigment. Extender gives body to your paint, while pigment perform two functions, coverage function and colorant function. Pigment, if you remember, we said dispersant helps in breaking down particles, and we have explained what we mean by particles. Now, we said we have what we call pigment. Pigment is for coverage and for colorant. Any color you want to achieve at all, you use what we call a pigment to achieve that. It's in powder form also. Now, when you put this pigment in your production process, you now mix it with other chemical. Let's assume you put what we call yellow oxide. You can use it to achieve what we call cream color or any color. When you put pigment into your production process without dispersants, you are going to have a little challenge. What is the challenge? Now, that pigment is in powder form. When you mix it properly, when you use that paint to produce any color of your choice, when you apply it on the surface, the color is not going to be even distributed. Simply means that when you apply it, you will see some portion that is very lighter in nature, you will see some very close to lighter, you will see some very deep. That means the color will not be even distributed on the surface. That is what we mean. And to make it even distributed on the surface, you need to put dispersant. How does dispersant work in paint production process? Dispersant is the chemical that is going to help you break down the pigment, the powder form, into a fine unit, the smallest size you can imagine at all, that is not visible to eyes. It is going to break it down, and when it breaks it down, it will make it to be even. When you put it, it will be even, easy blended in your production process. So that is the function that I said. It breaks down what? It breaks down particles in production process into a smaller unit so that you can achieve fine result, even distributed results. Another thing is this. During production process, let's assume you have produced your paint. Now you mix it without dispersant. After the paint settled down, all the pigment that you put that is in powder form, they are going to come to the surface of your production, suspend on what? On the solvent. Meaning that they will show that you use this type, you use that, they are not going to be blended together. But if you put dispersant, it is going to blend everything together as if you use what? You use a single chemical. That is another function. It brings all the particles to come together as if you use a single chemical. There will not be a separation. There will not be a separation in your production process. It binds everything together. Fine. You are going to achieve a even distributed what? result. It is going to prevent agglomeration, a cluster. Agglomeration simply means a cluster of what? A concentrated of what? Of pigment in a certain places on your production. Is going to prevent that. Since it is even distributed, it blends it perfectly. No agglomeration, no concentration of a pigment in a particular place again. So that is the function of what? Of dispersant. Simply means a dispersant, it is a chemical that makes your pigment to react perfectly with solvent during production process. Another function of a dispersant is that it makes your what? Your pigment to blend perfectly during production process. Another function is this: it prevents agglomeration, a concentration of a pigment in a particular place. It prevents that. Another function of what? Of dispersant is that it prevents sedimentation of pigment. During the process of producing paint, when you now produce it down for long period of time, every chemical will settle at the base. This dispersant prevents sedimentation. It prevents, sedimentation is the process. I don't know if you have noticed, when you produce a paint, all the chemical will settle at the base. If they settle at the base, no problem. And something like liquid will be at the surface, no problem. But where there's a problem is sedimentation, whereby all the chemical have now become something that is very strong, that you need to be using energy to squeeze before you can achieve you can use that paint. That is where there's a problem. So dispersant also prevent what? Sedimentation of pigments. So that is the function. I hope you get it right. According to the definition, dispersant, it is a chemical that breaks down particles into smaller units for even distribution. That is the function. Another thing is that dispersant serves as a wetting agent. It prevents all the powder to be on the surface. And it is also prevents it to be at the base, to settling at the base if you use the correct dispersant. That is the function of a dispersant. Another thing is this: it prevents agglomeration, a cluster of certain pigments, that it will prevent that. So with this now, I hope you'll be able to understand that dispersant, it is a very, very important chemical in paint production. See you in the next class for better explanation of other chemicals that require in producing quality paint production. My name still remains. My name is Bamidele. See you in the next class. Thank you.